Hey, what is up? Welcome back, Design Squad. And in this video, I'm gonna review another portfolio from a junior designer because we haven't done those in a while. She's transitioning from one field to the other, and she's at least at that point was doing bootcamp. As of this review, maybe already finished it. And this is what I want to address immediately because she's basically saying that she's UX UI designer and interior architect. As a hiring manager, I would want you to pick just one. I would want your portfolio to be based on things you want to do as you go, as you continue. Chances are you're never going to find a role which is going to have both, unless you're going to start your own startup or join a startup which is interior architecture plus you might do some UX design, if that makes sense. And so I would separate those, decouple those, maybe make a separate page just to contain, your architecture stuff, or make two separate portfolios if you're still not sure if you want to do one or the other. That landing page itself is great because she introduces herself first and foremost. She might not have that many examples of work yet, and so it's cheap points, but you can actually present yourself in a valuable way to actually introduce yourself as an addition to a team. This primary skills section is a bit questionable. I would probably just say focus areas, because chances are you're still honing those, and user research is really hundreds of skills in one. Same as for visual design, it has so many skill sets under it. User research has definitely empathy in it, and in that case it's a bit of apples to oranges. I would just say focus areas, or areas you're passionate about, would be much more rightful. And I know I'm being picky here on very specific bits, but that ultimately would matter because you need to taxonomize and craft information architecture of your portfolio as much as you would anywhere else. And these signals add up and it matters. And when you dive into projects, which you again divide into interior architecture, UX UI, master's degree, and I'm gonna be fair with you, when I started my portfolio and I was targeting agencies and any digital production houses, I had illustration, I had branding, I had UX, I had some flash animations, all over a place. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and when I figured out that it was UX. If you know you want to do UX, then just showcase your UX skills and add more projects, work on more projects, improve on it, add more cases. If you know specifically that that's what you want to do long term, just go all in, immerse yourself, don't dabble, and don't present too many bits which might not be relevant to, to potential employment opportunities. And another thing is UX and UI. You're gonna find a lot of job ads which are gonna have a title UX UI. Some of them are gonna be just UX. Read what the job ad is and make sure that you don't damage your own stance just having that /UI. A lot of old-timers in UX field are gonna be very UX/UI usually indicates, for people who are experienced in that you're focusing a lot on UI but not so much on UX or user research, or your user research is only informing UI but nothing else. As a starter, that's totally fine to indicate that. If UI is your focus, make sure it's clear. And so this is a case for online library of materials and inspiration for interior designers. One thing which immediately stood out when I was trying to play with it is that these arrows are not really a slideshow for the examples of the work you did, and that to me would be almost like a cardinal UX sin, because I would expect this just to flip through examples of the outcomes. Instead, this flips through to the next case study, and that to me is almost immediately threw me off, ooh, that's not a great UX. So you should definitely try to improve that. Or maybe if you have an ability to take these arrows somewhere down to the side, so it's very clear that you're gonna shift the whole page instead of just a component itself. And again, this division between UX and UI sort of highlights, and I would be very careful using it again. But to me, if you used this UX/UI and research in one bit, to me it says that, hey, maybe you don't know what UX research is, maybe you don't know what's the relationship between UX and UI is. I would be very careful and clean this up. Basically, I would just say user research if that's what you did. Don't try to put too many keywords and then mess things up, because in this case it could trip and hiring managers could be a bit thrown back again, because you're saying that interaction design, visual design, that's what UI design is ultimately. So you could just say UX research, product design, or UI design and call it a day. Just exactly what you did. Don't need to kind of fancify or get lost in the detail here. Tools, irrelevant. Nobody's really gonna care about that, to be honest. You could highlight the tools maybe in your landing page about how you approach problems. And actually, I don't think you added from before is your approach to UX. Maybe that's something you could add add as a section here clients and end users, interior designers, architects, suppliers. So there's 3 different players in this. Outline the challenge and problem statement. The challenge is framed from user perspective, and so is the problem statement. I would want to see this framed more from the actual business perspective first, because that's exactly how the projects originate. You could actually preface it a little bit more. This is almost like immediately says conceptual case. If you want to make it a bit more commercial or a bit more kind of real life, you would start with a business issue first. I like that you added the hypothesis as well. The hypothesis here is super specific. You're saying that it's an organized platform. And of course you can be specific here, but you need to be just very careful so you don't solutionize it way too quick. You outline the outcomes so that it's reduced time spent on material research. You're allowing users to update materials on the go, and ease of communication between suppliers. There's a lot of here as well. So if this is the outcome, I would expect immediately as a hiring manager to see how you arrived at those and how did you prove or disprove your hypotheses for these as well. And then the solution is down below, which is showcasing that prototype. That's good, but let's see exactly how you arrived at that. 15 surveys, 10 interviews, that's great. And I like that quant detail is kind of like supplemented with a qualitative detail. That's great. And then immediately you jumped into affinity mapping and how might we. So this is way too early for me for this. And I saw that you have down below some personas and some journey maps, but prospective ones, meaning the to be journey maps, not as is. So it's way too quick. That all that escalated way too quick. I would want to understand if you understand the as is landscape, as is users, as is dependencies and touch points, everything to do with how they do it now. And I understand that you unpack those survey results into affinity maps and you kind of grouped them, but so what? Did that allow you to frame the problem? Because how might we is a perfect way to ideate eventually when you outline your problem, but not really immediately. And your personas are simple. One thing which kind of threw me off is always the bars and those motivational bits, like what does that mean? Because if you're saying that they're cost motivated, then just say it. You don't have to have this slider bar, because what does half mean? What does like 70% mean? Like, you know, is there any type of reason to have it? And as another bit is also because the motivations here are different, right? So I would only use the progress bars and personas if I can compare it to something. So let's say if this was interior designer and this is supplier representative, I would expect their motivations to either match so I can easily compare and see the difference, or I would expect to have more interior designers with those motivations, and then I can kind of like a side by side see that this is more cost motivated, this is more inspiration or time motivated, and you know, that's the difference. That's how you distinguish it. Maybe you just didn't include more personas than you created, but in that case I would even ask why. How did you decide to kind of end up with this primary persona and then secondary persona as a different type of user altogether? And I remember you had 3 players, interior designers, architects, and suppliers. So I would be questioning where is that third one at least, or maybe each of those user groups should have several personas so you rightfully cover all the gaps. And if you prioritize just on these 2, how? Why? How did you arrive at these? And then, as mentioned before, you make this prospective journey map, which displays all the different bits, but I would cover this for as is journey. I noticed that a lot of junior designers use maps to represent the ideated states and to be states, you know, that future vision. But nothing is better for the vision than storyboard. That's probably the more appropriate way to visualize exactly how that experience is gonna be like. And then you can add all the different motives and, you know, different parameters to it. But the experience mapping efforts are great to outline the as is, so you can actually build up a layer on top of that and say, this is what we're improving, instead of jumping immediately into ideas. So what follows is pretty good because you outline the user flows, information architecture, design. I mean, it's on a high level, it kind of covers all of the bits I would be looking for anyways. Prototype, wireframed. I like that you visualize it this way, so you have why, what, who, where, how, and when. You kind of outline exactly what you did, how you did it. Again, you have interior designers and 2 architects, but not suppliers. So why did you use it as a persona, this means you're gonna target them. Why didn't you test it on them? You know, this gap you need to cover up. If this is a conceptual case, you do need to do a little bit extra work so everything is tied up. Because if you're mentioning that you're gonna target them, make sure it follows through and the story is cohesive. Any hiring manager who's gonna be looking to get someone in UX field is gonna pick these up. And if not in the portfolio reviews, in the actual interviews, I'm gonna grill you and I'm gonna ask exactly, where is that supplier? Like, how are they gonna use it? Did you consider it? If not, why? Why did you make the persona then if you're not gonna address it? You know, things of that nature. A little bit of outline of a marketing spiel here of exactly what value and benefits, I guess, different features give, representation visually, and then key learnings. Immediately I would be like, it needs a little bit more of a speculative of outcomes of exactly what this would end up being. Is this a conceptual case? Are you gonna still work on it? And I can see that you have very personal learnings, but it's also from the project perspective itself. Can you actually estimate how better is it gonna be like? Because I'm pretty sure in the beginning, if I remember correctly, you had these outcomes, which is reduced time spent on material research and ability to update on the go, the parameters, easy communication. These should be answered in that ending thing. You should add very specific bits to this if you actually capture that. Because if you just say that you reduced the time, I would be asking to what extent, what's the measure there? Because you focused a lot on the visual representation here, but that's all great. It looks good. I already can tell that your UI skills are good enough. Now give me the UX, the underlying bits and the logic and your approach, that it's sound and it's properly tested. And one thing what I definitely picked up, and what I pick up in a lot of junior portfolios, is that you're testing the features, but not the purpose, the meaning. How does that actually answer the user problems and challenges? How does that tie in with the challenges you discovered before? They don't really tie in with the actual outcomes you set. And you know, it's all about outcomes. It's how well is that process actually tie in. Because if we go back and we say, we believe by creating organized platform where interior designers can easily access, synthesize information, process these things, you definitely need measures. Because if you created a hypothesis, you need to answer it. And I would be looking in the end, actually, have you answered it? Maybe in your mind you did, but then just showcase it, show it. Because I would be like, okay, this is a good enough product designer, but that heavy UX focus is still not there. And don't get me wrong, for junior designer who's trying to get into the field, this is a really good start. You still have a few bits to do here and there, but chances are some people are gonna want you to actually have a chat with you to see if there's potential to actually go further and for you to improve, and there's a growth opportunities and things of that nature. So don't stop there. Keep on hammering at it. Update this case study even further. When the next project comes or you have another side project, make sure you do it cohesively and you know exactly how this information permeates to the next step. And for everyone else, if you like this video, make sure to smash that subscription button, like it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next time.